Izuku Midoriya is granted a quirk, but this quirk is different than anything else he's ever thought of. Because yes, he does have a quirk, but it's a minuscule quirk. So a quirk that gives him some sort of connection to the ground. He feels the ground. He understands it, and it's odd, but he can feel when earthquakes are going to happen before they happen. And for years, all the way up until about 10 years old, he believes that his quirk is lame. A lot of other people believe that too, that his quirk is lame. He basically is quirkless. But one thing he doesn't know is that his connection to the earth itself is beyond what he would possibly imagine. Because one day, at the age of 10 years old, going into about 11 years old, something would happen. He was at the school and he would be just on the playground of some sorts. And out of nowhere, he would see somebody running his direction. Somebody that he knows, and one of his friends by the name of Bakugo. Bakugo goes to basically kick a soccer ball out of the way, and he goes and flying kicks Izuku, or is about to. Izuku immediately would put his arm up, basically trying to defend himself. And as he does it, a kind of block of earth or a block from the ground would come up and would slam into Bakugo, forcing Bakugo to go face first into this giant kind of boulder that gets pulled out of the ground. And he's in shock, thinking, how the heck did Izuku even do that? What even happened? How was he able to do that? In which this, of course, would make him lose his mind a little bit, but he would realize that Izuku's quirk isn't so basic and isn't so boring. It's actually pretty damn insane. And this gives Bakugo a bit of a complex, you could say, that makes him think that he needs to be better than Izuku. He has to do anything in his power to be better than Izuku. He starts bullying Izuku even more than he was already, putting him down even more, saying that he's useless, that this, and that. It took him this long to figure out what his powers did. It took him this long to figure out anything he could do. And he basically tells him, like, yeah, you're useless, you can't do anything, and it's blah, blah, blah. And Izuku's like, no, I'm not useless. Like, I could be a hero. I could do this, I could do that. And Bakugo is basically telling him, like, no, you can't. Like, you're not able to do that. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to, do something good or blah, blah, blah. You're not going to be a good hero. And after all of that, after everything that was being said, everything that they were going through, Izuku just focused on getting better. But you know who else focused on getting better? Katsuki Bakugo. Because he might have been trying to put Izuku down, but day in and day out, he would see that Izuku is training, preparing, and getting better every single day. It seems like he's starting to understand how to utilize his quirk, how to earthbend, how to really utilize the ground that is underneath his feet. Even being able to pick up rocks themselves and use them as extremely fast projectiles. He continues to utilize everything in his arsenal, all via the earth itself. The connection to the earth itself is beyond what Izuku can imagine, and all the way up until he's about 15 years old, he's training, and training. And that day that his teacher is talking about how him and Bakugo are trying for UA, well, Bakugo would be enraged, and at the end of the class, Bakugo would try to attack Izuku, and Izuku would be barely able to defend himself, realizing that Bakugo has been preparing and training himself a lot more than he ever has. Seeing that his explosions are stronger, everything he does is stronger, and Izuku would cover himself in kind of like a rock of some sort, putting himself in that rock and defending himself from the explosions. He's blocking himself and trying to not allow Bakugo to hurt him anymore. And other teachers would run outside to see this, and they would yell at Bakugo, telling him to stop. But eventually Izuku would have enough of it, and he would scream, pushing outward of the kind of boulder he was in, and it would send Bakugo flying, and he would even send a couple of the other students flying as well. Izuku would see this, and he would just shake his head, and he would just immediately run away, utilizing the earth beneath him to kind of slide his way out so swiftly, and everyone's kind of like in shock, and he was able to literally defend and defeat Bakugo himself, someone who has legitimately been the star student, the strongest they know, and everything for a very long time. But Izuku's fights with Bakugo would force him to actually miss out on a moment that he would have had with All Might. Not actually seeing the sludge villain, not being around it, and All Might would catch up to the sludge villain anyways, defeat him, kind of put him in bottles and take him away. And it seems as if this moment wouldn't actually occur, and Izuku would never even meet All Might, at least not in this same way. But it would set him on a course for 10 months straight of just training, preparing, and utilizing this earthbending to its highest degree. He doesn't know what level he can get to. He doesn't know how powerful he could truly get, but he knows that he's going to push himself to the absolute limit. He's going to push himself to a limit that nobody has seen before. And he begins to utilize everything in his arsenal. I mean, he's utilizing earthbending. He's utilizing every little aspect of Earth itself. If that's from, utilizing mud, if that's utilizing sand and stuff like that, he's utilizing everything. He's trying to feel his way through, and he's trying to figure out anything he can possibly do with the acts of earthbending. And in doing so, it allowed him to really up his game, really up his abilities, and really up his kind of chances at still becoming that hero. His mother would be massively proud of him, extremely proud of him, so much so that she would basically tell him like it's all you now. Everything that you can do, everything that you're figuring out, all of it, you can do this. And Izuku thinks about this and thinks, you know what? You're right. I can't. I just have to put my mind to it, put my heart into it, and I can really, really take this to the next level. And that's exactly what Izuku does when he shows up at the UA entrance exam. Because when he shows up at the UA entrance exam, this is when people start realizing that he can really do his thing. Because he starts sliding around, destroying all of these robots with pillars of earth just spiking out, and he would just destroy them over and over and over again, just obliterating them as he goes by. And everyone's watching thinking, whoa, this is pretty damn insane. All the teachers watch closely thinking, how is he able to do it in such an easy way, such a simple way? And he's just flying around, basically obliterating everything he possibly can, destroying everything he possibly can, putting himself in every single best scenario he knows he can get to. And at the end of the day, at the very end of it all, he would finally get a ton of points, and even would go head to head with a giant robot they call the Zero Pointer, who's this insanely giant robot that would be extremely difficult for anybody else to take on. But Izuku focuses everything, even crumbling the buildings on top of this giant robot, protecting a girl that is covered in rubble by the name of Ochako Uraraka. And in one foul swoop, this movement, this kind of act of heroism allowed Izuku not only to get more points, but eventually he would be deemed the #1 student in class, or in the first years, or class 1A. And this would shock him, because when he looks at that letter, when he would go home after all of it is said and done and look at that letter, he would be in shock, thinking that he went from somebody who had a quirk that was useless to somebody who's the #1 student in the most prestigious school, in the entirety of Japan. And this is not a chance he's going to take lightly. This is a chance he's going to give his complete and utter all, because at the end of the day, he still has so much to prove, not only to everyone else, but also to himself. So Izuku Midoriya, he pushes forward into that first day, and before you know it, his first very test in front of, one of UA's best teachers, other known as Shota Aizawa, would begin. A quirk assessment test, a test that is going to change everything, an outlook on himself and an outlook on everybody else. Because when people heard about Izuku Midoriya's quirk, well, they were questioning it. What does it actually do? At least for the people that didn't see it with their own eyes. And when Izuku Midoriya would step up in front of everybody and be deemed the number one student here, he would launch the ball utilizing the earth beneath them, basically shooting a pillar up with the ball and launching it as far as he possibly can. Now the distance, it goes pretty far, but it's not anything to the degree of something insane. Like, it's not him launching it to outer space or anything like that, but it launches it pretty damn far. I mean, it's impressive. But when he steps back, when he goes back into the line, and everyone's thinking, oh, this is so great, this is going to be so fun, blah, 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 Aizawa ups the ante and tells them that it's not going to be fun necessarily, and that they are going to be playing for keeps, because whoever's last place is going to go home and be expelled and will not be able to be a hero coming out of UA. In which this would shock so many people, but Izuku Midoriya has no reason to fear because he's not going to be last, and he makes that very clear. So he pushes the ante and starts showing everything he possibly can. His speed, utilizing his earthbending, his strength, his everything you could think of. And eventually, well, he sees where he's placed, and he's placed actually at number 1. Even though his ball throw was a little lackluster, everything else was high tier, to the point where he's even as fast, or to a degree as fast, as someone like Tenya Ida. And everything else, in terms of strength, he utilizes the earth around him to kind of up his strength to a different degree, upping his own personal ability and physical ability to a degree that he believes is high enough and of a proper level that he believes he needs to be at. And getting number 1 here as well, it would piss off Bakugo. Bakugo would be angry, saying that he's been hiding this, the strength, his power. He wasn't this powerful. He wasn't this strong. He believes that Izuku basically is just, somehow getting stronger to the degree of, like, he's even passing Bakugo so quickly, and Bakugo gets so mad that he goes charging at him, shooting an explosion, but Izuku would immediately stomp on the ground, and a kind of pillar would pop up and smack Bakugo right in the face, as Bakugo would fall to the ground unconscious. Aizawa would look at him and nod his head and kind of shrug and tell him, "Well, bring the angry kid to the nurse, or bring the angry kid to a recovery girl." And that's exactly what he does, as he basically tells everybody else that they're allowed to go home, or allowed to go to their next classes and orientation and stuff like that. And, some people are like, well, what about someone getting expelled? And he's like, nah, it was just a ruse. Like, I wasn't actually going to expel any of you. And, some, like, blah, 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 all that good stuff. And he sends them all away. And before you know it, the very next day, he would actually, and everybody would actually be training and preparing to actually work with All Might himself. Yes, they're going to be training with All Might in Heroes versus Villains training. This Heroes versus Villains training is going to be pretty damn insane, especially when Bakugo and Izuku would face off once again. It would be Bakugo and Tenya Ida as the villains, and Izuku and Ochako as the heroes. And Izuku, well, he already knows what he wants to do, because when they're standing outside, he takes off his shoes, and she wonders, like, what is he doing? Like, seriously, like, what's going on? In which he places his feet on the ground and starts really feeling it. He tries to feel and sense everything around him, and he has a hard time doing this. It's not easy for him to do this, but he begins to feel his way through the entirety of the building, knowing exactly where Bakugo and Tenya are, but trying to find where the bomb is. And he assumes where both of them initially stood is most likely where that bomb is, and he kind of pinpoints the direction that it possibly could be, and he knows that it's by a window, so it has to be on one of the sides of the building. So when the time is up, immediately he would grab onto Ochako and shoot himself and her right up toward the window and see exactly where it is. They would break through the glass and immediately touch the bomb, And let's just say everybody watching is in complete shock and awe, thinking, whoa, that was quick. It seems like he was able to deduce where everything was, where everyone was, and where the bomb was before anyone could really even react. And before you know it, Izuku Midoriya was already on the perfect timing and was already in the perfect place for him to basically get or basically touch the bomb and win the entire training session. And Bakugo is pissed, absolutely pissed by this. I mean, he wanted to fight. He wanted to show everybody that he's better than Izuku. He wanted to show everybody that he could go one-on-one with one of the strongest here, and supposedly the strongest here. He wanted to prove to everyone that he is the strongest here. But Izuku, well, he didn't even give him that opportunity. He didn't give him the chance. He didn't give him the opportunity. He didn't give him the option. Izuku was already immediately on where he needed to be, already immediately in the place he needed to be, and he knew from the very beginning that this is what needed to be done, and this is what needed to happen, and that's exactly what he got done, exactly what he did. And Izuku Midoriya was fully prepared for everything that was going to happen and everything that was happening during that sequence. Now, with that said, he does kind of continue on working with his classmates, working with everybody else, training and preparing. And eventually the day of the USJ would arrive. A day where things would, to a large extent, change quite a bit. And what he doesn't know, and what everybody doesn't know, is that this rescue training facility would turn into a full-on villain attack before you could even possibly imagine. Because when he jumps into that USJ, when they're there, they're excited, and Pro Hero 13 is explaining so many different things. Out of nowhere, portals would open up, and out of nowhere, villains would invade. And before you know it, the villains would be sending all of the students to different locations, sending Asui, Izuku Midoriya, and also Mineta to a nearby lake of some sorts. And of course, Asui does save Izuku quickly, putting him on the ship with her, in which he's thinking, okay, what's the best course of action for us? How are we getting out of here? Which he kind of thinks, all right, well, for one, he needs to get to the ground. I mean, he doesn't know how he's going to do it, but he needs to. I mean, obviously, he needs to be touching Earth to a certain extent to actually make it move and do things. He might be able to launch it up from a distance, but that's not going to have any effect, really. He needs to touch the bottom of this lake. He needs to get his feet on that ground if he wants to do anything. And obviously, they don't know if they can actually do that, if that's really possible, in which, of course, that is questioning, or they are questioning this quite a bit. But Asui says that she has pretty much really good control over her swimming and her ability in the water. And she asks him, do you promise? If we get to that ground level, you can handle the rest? In which Izuku nods his head, and he says, I promise. If you get my feet on the ground, it's over. I'll end this quickly, and you won't have to worry about it. In which Mineta looks at him and thinks, oh, I mean, what am I going to do? I mean, am I going to do anything? In which, of course, Izuku says, well, you can be a distraction if you want to be. I mean, if you want to jump in and just, try to tie them all up with, or any of them up with your, whatever's on your head, which is really gross, by the way. In which, of course, he's like, that's just messed up, but is also very true. But still, Izuku would then dive headfirst with Asui, and Mineta would go throwing all of his sticky balls everywhere he possibly can to try to slow down any of the villains. Izuku and Asui would dodge villains throughout the water, and eventually they would get to the bottom as Izuku would basically put his feet down on the ground, and as he does, everything would start to shake, and a bunch of pillars and a bunch of kind of all the earth beneath them would start pushing its way up, flooding or pushing out all the water into different areas, and on top of that, pushing a bunch of the area of the lake upward, making it up all the way up to the ground. And as they come out of the water, the fish-like creatures would come out as well, but Izuku would have all the ground he needs to take them out, immediately sending kind of like these like slices of earth straight at them, kicking and punching his way over as they're sliding and slashing through, and hitting them, and they're all falling back down and being knocked completely out. Eventually, they would kind of slide their way through, and they would get out of the lake-like area, and Izuku would get both Mineta and Asui to safety. But obviously there is a lot going on right now, and Aizawa is about to be hurt and attacked by the Nomu. But before you know it, as the Nomu is about to punch Aizawa in the face, Izuku would immediately lift Aizawa off the ground using his earthbending, kind of pushing him up as the punch would punch the earth itself, or the kind of pillar that he creates, and Aizawa is able to dodge, just barely getting out of harm's way, and he would basically thank Izuku for the assist, but they're going to have to do a lot more than that to stall their way out until reinforcements arrive, in which Izuku says, well, like, I agree. I mean, it's going to take a lot, but they can do it. And Izuku just starts trying to basically entrap the Nomu. He starts building around the Nomu, creating kind of like a completely earth or like stone like base house, but the Nomu's breaking through it. He starts putting walls in front of the Nomu, trying to just slow it down. That's all he's trying to do, is slow it down. And as he's doing this, it is slowing the Nomu down, at least to a degree. And Shigaraki screams at the Nomu, telling him to basically do what he is supposed to and basically end them right now. In which Izuku watches as Nomu would break through and is about to land a blow on Aizawa, but he just barely gets Aizawa out of harm's way and then slides underneath the Nomu and begins to change the ground beneath them to quicksand. As it turns into quicksand, as he bends the ground, the Nomu would get stuck and would even struggle a bit to try to get out. He would turn to Izuku and he would try to grab him, but Izuku would just literally just disappear within the sand itself. He didn't know if this was going to work, and he definitely cannot breathe under here, but at least he's slowing him down. And as Izuku would go underneath, he would hear something above. He would hear one Detroit smash, and as the feet of the Nomu would basically disappear from the sand, and he would hear a loud smack against a wall from a certain distance, he would come out of the sand, and he would see All Might ready to fight, and All Might ready to basically clash with this Nomu. And Aizawa basically tells Izuku that he did his job. He did good. Now stay back and let them handle this. As Aizawa takes on Shigaraki, makes sure that he stays out of the fight, and All Might takes on the Nomu, clashing over and over and over again. And Aizawa is just thinking that all he has to do is keep Shigaraki away from All Might, and All Might should be able to win this fight. And that is definitely the case, because All Might, before you know it, would send the Nomu spiraling outside the entirety of the USJ. And before you know it, Shigaraki and Kurogiri would be taking a portal out of there, trying to get themselves to safety. But Shigaraki would take a couple bullets just for good measure, as he would be sent out by a portal, and Kurogiri as well, vowing to show up again very soon. But before you know it, the class and everybody else would have a couple days off, take a bit of a breather, and they would obviously head off and prepare for their UA Sports Festival. It's kind of difficult when you're dealing with all this nonsense and dealing with all this stuff, but the UA Sports Festival is time for everybody to show what they're capable of, everybody to show what they can do, and let's just say Izuku is happy to oblige. And at the very beginning of the UA Sports Festival, he would stand in front of a giant audience and tell them all that he is going to put on an absolute show. That everybody around him, they're going to give the best show they possibly can, but also show everybody that they really are the next generation, and they really are going to be the next big heroes that everybody will watch very, very closely. And he tells them all to watch very, very close, because before you know it, you might just run into the person that is going to take the mantle of the number one hero. Everybody cheers, and everybody in terms of the students would line up, prepare, and get ready for the first thing. And that right there is, well, obviously the obstacle course race. But before you know it, when Izuku's running through that tunnel, a smile would grow on his face as he would speed up just a little bit, sliding through, and he would immediately put a wall in front of everybody, blocking off every single person from exiting the tunnel just as he leaves it. And he would basically just go as fast as he possibly can, sliding and utilizing the earth underneath his feet to dodge different things, and he would pass up everything and everyone, covering distance like it was nothing, and basically going over every single obstacle in a very quick succession. And before you know it, he would obviously be the number one, or be the first in the obstacle course race, but he would be number one by a mile. I mean, Izuku utilizing his quirk in this way, blocking off that front entrance or that exit, I mean, it made it so that it was impossible really for anybody to kind of recover and keep up as they wanted to. They actually struggled there for like a minute and a half, and they were trying to break through. I mean, even the people that are strong enough to break through, they were doing everything they could to try to get people out of the way to like blow open a hole so that they can go through it. But everybody, they weren't really, coordinated and stuff like that. So it was kind of difficult for them to actually, push through that area and get through to the place that they wanted to get to. And eventually, yes, they would get through, but they would see Izuku just sitting there waiting as everybody would eventually arrive. And Izuku would be deemed, obviously, the number one, but also the wielder of the 10 million point band, and that would put a target on his back. But target or not, he teams up with Ochako, Tokiyame, and Meihatsume, where he utilizes his earthbending to basically launch them into the sky and just keep them there. I mean, he literally puts just defensive measures all around them so easily, and everybody who would try to actually get the band of Izuku would fail miserably. I mean, miserably. They would try anything they possibly can to basically get Izuku, grab his band, or do something along those lines, but they couldn't do any of it. It wasn't close. They had no chance at it, and the cavalry battle would be theirs, and Izuku Midoriya and his class, or his classmates, teammates, whatever you want to call them, they would pass on to that next portion, which would be the 1 versus 1s. And this right here would be the spectacle that the audience would be waiting for. The spectacle that every single person would be watching very, very closely. Because all of the best heroes there, all the best future heroes there, are going to be standing, waiting, and prepared to really do everything they possibly can to show off their capabilities. But not only that, this is their chance to show that they are better than the person in front of them one-on-one. They're better than the person in front of them a mano. Because at the end of the day, that's what people want to see. Who's better than who? Is this person better than the other person? Well, Izuku Midoriya wants to prove that he's better than them all, and the first match he has is against Hitoshi Shinso, and he makes quick work of Shinso, not even really paying attention to his yapping and his talking and his trying to bait him into his quirk. Izuku just basically landslides him right off the kind of stage, and he would be ready to take on someone like Todoroki, because this right here is where you prove that you really are the strongest. And he faces off with Todoroki, and they give it their absolute all. I mean, everything. They're clashing ice versus earth, back and forth, and eventually, well, Izuku would give it his complete and utter all and smash through the ice and get to Todoroki, and wouldn't be thinking about, oh, use your fire side, use this. Izuku's just thinking about getting better, and he's thinking about showing everybody what he's capable of. And before you know it, he would eliminate Todoroki, and the very next round would do the same thing to Tenya Ida, making him stuck in the mud, his feet unable to move, and he would slide him right out of the ring or the stage for basically preparing for the up-and-coming fight, the fight that everybody's been waiting for, Bakugo versus Izuku Midoriya. The fight that everybody has been really, really looking towards, and the one that Izuku wants as well, because this is the same person the menace himself that has been treating him like garbage. But this is his chance, his moment, and his one true test that he gets a chance to show everybody and show himself that the distance between him and Bakugo is really that far. The distance between him and his childhood friend, there is a big one, and he's going to show it right now. But we're going to wait to do that and show that in the next part of What If Deku Was an Earthbender. Izuku Midoriya faces off with Katsuki Bakugo, and really, there's only one way this fight is going to go, and that is in the direction of Izuku Midoriya. But this is his opportunity, his chance to really show that there is levels between him and Bakugo, and this is exactly what happens, because when they start clashing, they start fighting, Bakugo shoots explosion after explosion after explosion, making tiny bits of earth and the ground and stone all around them, to the point where there was so much everywhere that he gets a bit of deja vu from an earlier round with the one and only Ochako Uraraka, when Izuku starts raising all the stones, sharpening all of them as well, and he launches all of them at Bakugo from various different directions, to the point where he cannot evade, he cannot avoid, and he gets struck by a multitude of them, and he gets pushed straight to the ground, falling right on his face before you know it, unable to actually keep up and unable to actually defend himself. Defeating Katsuki Bakugo, though, was a foregone conclusion, and frankly, everybody knew that this is exactly how the fight would end up going. And on top of that, there's a lot of people out there that are cheering on Izuku and cheering on the fact that he has been showing one hell of a performance. Not only has he been showing it in the UA Sports Festival, but he's been showing it on every occasion you can possibly imagine. Izuku Midoriya is showing off his capabilities and where he's at in terms of a level, in terms of a potential superhero, and he continues to show every single person that there is going to be a large thing ahead of him in terms of his capabilities, in terms of what he's going to do here and now, and in terms of what he potentially can get done in the future of the hero world. I mean, he's out here he's out here showing his potential, showing what he can do, and showing that every single person, hero, and so on should be on watch, because Izuku Midoriya is on his way to the top, and there's nothing that is going to stop him. And he truly believes that, truly and utterly believes that there is nothing that is going to slow him down. And that right there is the truth. And as the winner of the UA Sports Festival, so many people cheer his name, and so many people are excited to see what eventually he's going to do. And this would lead him to getting countless offers from various different internships and other things like that. And a lot of the offers include various top heroes, but one that he didn't expect he would get, and one that he actually ended up having, is actually Best Jeanist. Someone who he's excited to work with and believes that he can transcend himself to that next level. But someone else also accepted that same invitation, and that is Katsuki Bakugo. And let's just say they don't get along too well, but Best Jeanist is really wanting both of them to work together, because he believes not only will they bring the best out of each other, but they'll also bring this kind of competitive reality right in front of each other as well. And that's exactly what happens. They're going head to head every single day, back and forth, and yes, Izuku shows a lot more promise in terms of being your traditional hero, but Bakugo himself, he has all the promise in the world in terms of power, capabilities, and so much more as well. But at the end of the day, Best Jeanist wants to get the best out of both of them and get the most out of both of them as well. And that's what he's potentially trying to do. That's what his goal is. That is what he is looking forward to doing. And after days of working with both of them, and after really not getting, let's just say, much done with Bakugo, because in all honesty, Bakugo is a stubborn idiot a lot of the times, but at the end of the day, he does, they do have, some decent time there. But at the end of the day, and after almost a week, they would get a call back to UA, a call back because of, unfortunately, someone was put in the hospital. Tenya Ida being attacked by the hero killer, and Izuku Midoriya not actually being there. Well, that leads to Tenya being, hospitalized for quite a while, and Izuku and many others are forced to basically go straight forward and continue pushing on as their final exams are coming up very, very soon. And these final exams, well, they include vast amounts of things. Well, for starters, you have your written portion and stuff like that. But the main thing to think about, and the main thing to really, really understand, is that this portion of the final exam also includes a practical, and this practical is definitely not your traditional robot v heroes and stuff like that. No. It is actually going to be some up and coming heroes facing off with, well, the other another teacher as well. And Bakugo and Izuku are going to have to team up once again and take on literally the greatest hero alive, being that of All Might. And this fight, yes, in a technical sense, they're not going to be able to take down All Might. They're not going to be able to, defeat him in a traditional way. But them together, they do show some capabilities. And after some back and forth and arguments all alike, eventually, and finally, they decide, okay, you know what? We're not going to do this. We're not going to argue. We're not going to, bicker and all this BS. And eventually, they're able to take that, they're able to take it to All Might and really start fighting All Might. And together with the explosions and the various amounts of kind of usage of earthbending that Izuku could really use and maintain and slow down All Might to a certain degree, eventually they get an opening that they could actually escape the battlefield, leading to them winning this portion of their exam, even though they did get hurt quite a bit. And unfortunately, yes, it's not the most beautiful win in the world, but at the end of the day, they defeated quote-unquote All Might, or quote-unquote defeated All Might, and they were able to really show what they were capable of and really show that they had capabilities beyond most of the hero students. And this would allow them to go to the forest training camp, luckily enough. And when they head off over there, they have a ton of training to do. But unfortunately, that training would be cut short when a vast amount of villains would show up invading that same forest training camp. And Izuku would fight alongside everybody, fight alongside his classmates, his teammates, his teachers, to defend everyone they possibly can. And Izuku, well, he would go face to face with even a giant, monstrous dude by the name of Muscular, where he does everything in his power to fend him off, utilizing a version of a kind of stone-like suit that he goes blow for blow with this guy with, and he just starts fighting alongside other people, or more specifically fighting to basically protect this kid by the name of Koda. Koda is terrified. I mean, he's losing it. He is absolutely terrified of what's happening, and terrified that basically this monstrous creature is trying to kill him. This monstrous guy is trying to end him, and he's trying to do everything in his power to defend Koda. And Izuku shows off his full connection with the earth and stone itself, because eventually he would get the upper hand, send Muscular into a wall or into the mountain, and make it so that he's stuck there permanently as the mountain basically absorbs him. And Izuku is watching as he grabs Koda, gets him out of harm's way, and leaves Muscular buried within this giant mountain. But before you know it, Izuku would be out there trying to help his classmates, and this little distraction of the forest training camp would come to an end when Shigaraki and many others are unable to capture Bakugo, and they are unable to get the upper hand that they needed to actually, take Bakugo and actually, take him over and basically get him to flip sides, or at least potentially get him to flip sides, so that they can get another person that is, for the most part, like their little, next up and coming strong villain, a part of their kind of organization. But Bakugo, well, for one, would have never gone for that. But for two, he was unable to be captured with the help of Izuku, utilizing his earthbending to a different degree. Honestly, he's able to kind of section out the villains and help out a lot after the Muscular fight, not having to be massively injured and beat up and destroyed to the extent that he was. He was able to then start kind of helping out and doing various things, trying to help out and protect so many other of his classmates that the villains were unable to capture Bakugo. But before you know it, and days after this occurs, you would have the invasion with All For One looking to actually end everything and everyone, including the one and only All Might, trying to put an end to All Might's kind of reign of heroism. And he, unfortunately, at least for him, fails. But fortunately for the world of Japan, or the world of My Hero Academia, he fails in the face of it all. But the League of Villains still try to stand tall, trying to do their best. But this leads to Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and many others of the League of Villains being captured on the scene, as many other heroes are there and not occupied to make sure that things get shut down and make sure that everything goes the way of the heroes. And before you know it, the League of Villains and All For One are put behind bars, and Izuku Midoriya and many others just watch this from afar, watch this from their televisions. But everybody has a bad feeling, an odd feeling, that this will not be the end of them and not be the end of those villains. And that would be definitely the truth. And after some time would pass, Izuku and his class would go off to get their provisional hero license, or at least do the exam for it. And the first portion has a lot to do with actually eliminating people via kind of like a dodgeball type of format. And Izuku doesn't have too much trouble in doing so, actually utilizing his earthbending to capture a couple people to easily eliminate them, and also utilizes some of his earthbending to kind of protect various people from getting actually tagged with various of these red balls. And after all this is said and done, after all this is handled, Izuku would then kind of continue toward the lobby and wait for the next portion. Wait for the next portion that is potentially going to happen. And the next portion that is going to basically occur is a rescue portion. Yes, a rescue portion. A rescue portion is pretty interesting because everybody is going to kind of work together. Everybody is going to kind of do things together to try to protect people, and Izuku is perfect for this, being able to use his earthbending to lift up buildings, help people out from under rubble, and various things like that. And eventually a giant wave of villains would show up, and Izuku's ability to kind of shift the earth and kind of and basically protect a good chunk of people that are there. It seems as if Izuku is able to, do his thing and help out where he can in terms of like separating the villains and also slowing down Gang Orca with his earthbending, with walls that he's able to set up, with craters that he would then create, and eventually the villains would be stalled out and a big stalemate would ensue as Inasa and Todoroki would make a vortex of some sorts with their fire and their wind, and eventually Gang Orca would be falling slow or getting slower and slower and falling a little bit short of what he was trying to do, leading to the students, a mass majority of them, passing the provisional hero license exam, except for Bakugo, Inasa, and Todoroki, who had a lot of trouble working either with the rescue people that needed to be rescued, or also have a hard time working together, which we did see initially when Inasa and also Todoroki tried to create the tornado as well, or the tornado for themselves. But as all this is kind of finishing up and as all this is concluding, Izuku gets various offers from various internships or from various work studies, and they would have a conversation with the big three about that specifically, leading to Mirio beating up on literally all of them. And that includes Izuku. Izuku, yes, he's able to do some pretty impressive things, but his earthbending doesn't really stand up to what Mirio is able to do, and he tries to catch him out. He tries to catch him off guard with various things, but he's unable to really get a hold of Mirio, really slow him down, and he's unable to really defeat him in a fight, and he still falls short just like the rest of the class. But it just proves that people with this work study experience is kind of like, you know, pretty ahead of a lot of people, and that right there just shows to Izuku that he needs to keep pushing it. He needs to keep going, and that he really needs to continue preparing for. He needs to continue preparing for the eventual time where he is going to be a hero, very similar to a more experienced person like Mirio, and he wants to train hard and work hard and all these things. And even asked Mirio if he wonders if he could somehow get into the work study that he's in. And yes, it takes a bit of a conversation and also a bit of a test for Izuku Midoriya, but Izuku's ability to control earth and stone and rocks and everything you can think of to a high degree, and a degree without even really thinking much about it, it makes it very difficult for the one and only Sir Night-Eye to say no to the idea of taking on an actual earth bender. And with that said, Izuku would continue pushing, would continue wanting to do more, and before you know it, he would be placed in a situation, a scenario that he'll never forget, a scenario that involves one by the name of Overhaul, and Izuku just doesn't exactly know what he should do. But there's one little factor, a little girl by the name of Eri, and it makes Izuku question if he should really hold back, if he should really wait, or should he go through with this and try and fight him here and now. But before you know it, you would be basically being told by Mirio to let it go, to let him leave, because this is the best way to kind of keep him safe, or keep Eri safe, excuse me. So this is the best way to approach it. And Izuku, in his head, he's thinking, no, I can't do that. Like, are you sure? Like, are you serious? Like, I can't just let this guy walk away with this child. But eventually, he does. He lets Overhaul leave and walk away, but he hopes by everything that this was not the wrong choice, that this was not the wrong decision, and he hopes that Mirio is right, and eventually it would be proven that he was right, because Izuku would be more than capable and more than helpful in the invasion of the Shiya Hizaikai base, where he's able to basically break down every single wall that needs to be broken down so easily. But then on top of that, he's legitimately able to kind of do various things like kind of get people into bad spots in terms of like creating like earth that surrounds them, or kind of putting them in little boxes where they're not, if they're not strong enough to break out, they're gonna be stuck there the entire time. And he makes various like little like earth or stone-like prisons for various different villains. And this cuts the villains in like half, where Izuku's able to help out every single person that is all around. And eventually he arrives at where Mirio is currently fighting against Overhaul. And as a bullet would ring out straight toward Eri, Izuku would then put a kind of box around Eri where the bullet would just clatter off and do nothing, and Mirio would look toward her and see that Izuku has the defense of Eri handled, and Izuku grabs Eri and gets out of there ASAP, as Mirio continues to clash with Overhaul and gets the upper hand on multiple occasions. And as Sir Night-Eye arrives as well, Mirio and Sir Night-Eye as a duo keep up with the villain known as Overhaul and end up actually putting him on the back foot, to where he starts doing things that is out of the ordinary and borderline insane. But then eventually they would get that upper hand. They would need and get that upper hand, and Overhaul would slow down massively, even with the help of absorbing some of his other allies, and with the help of Izuku striking him as well, creating this giant boulder that gets chucked his way, distracting him just enough. Mirio and Sir Night-Eye would land hits to Overhaul and would eventually defeat him before any massive amounts of casualties. And the Sir Night-Eye agency is ending up on top on this day, and defeats and eliminates the one and only Shia Hazaikai, and the one and only that they know as of course the one of the craziest villains out there in Overhaul, outside of someone like All For One and stuff like that. But they're able to defeat Overhaul, put him behind bars, defeat the Shia Hazaikai, and put them behind bars as well. And eventually, it leads the students of UA to continue on at being students. And Izuku Midoriya gets that chance as well, starting to, for the most part, work with and also train with his class and other people as well, leading to a Class 1A versus Class 1B type of fight, a fight that is pretty interesting and pretty insane. But at the end of the day, Izuku has such an advantage over so many of them that it makes it pretty straightforward for Izuku to find his way in defeating them. But more specifically, he finds his way in defeating even Monoma, who tries to steal his quirk, but realizes that he can't actually even utilize it like at all, being that Izuku's quirk initially was very underwhelming, to the point where if you wanted to learn it, you would have to learn it to a degree that most people would have no idea how to utilize it. And that right there allows for Izuku to kind of keep every single person at bay, and also really stay on top in terms of defeating so many of his fellow classmates. But eventually, real serious work would begin. Now, they would start working with work studies. Izuku would continue working with Sir Night-Eye's agency, but before you know it, the idea of this kind of invasion of some sorts would actually happen. This invasion that we're talking about is a prison break, a break that it seems that people are going to be dealing with, and a prison break that is involving, well, one person. That is Overhaul, but one group more specifically is the Shia Hazaikai, or the League of Villains. And that right there is pretty damn terrifying. And because before you know it, after only a couple months past this idea of a prison break, these villains preparing for that specifically, well, it eventually would ensue, and a giant creature, something that Izuku has been preparing for a very long time, would start running toward the prison that is basically protecting the villain, the League of Villains, and also All For One. Now, Izuku's main job is to slow down Gigantomachia, and he does just that. He's sending everything at Gigantomachia, everything that he could possibly muster, anything that he can possibly do. He is sending the way of Gigantomachia, throwing these like earth-like waves, sending all of these various things, and he's trying everything to slow him down, knowing that if he doesn't slow him down, things could go bad, and go bad really, really fast. And that's the last thing he would want. Last thing he does want. He doesn't want anybody to be in trouble. And this time that he is able to basically grant so many of these other heroes, it gives them enough time to kind of slow down the various other villains that are a part of this this kind of prison break, but also give them enough time to help him out as well, leading them to actually kind of defeating a vast amount of villains. And Midnight and many other heroes would show up to help Izuku, as Izuku is legitimately trying to stop Gigantomachia in his tracks, making this quicksand underneath his feet, hardening that quicksand so Gigantomachia can no longer move. And he's only just, we're talking yards away from the prison, and Izuku is holding him still with all his might, and everybody around him is trying their best to slow him down, utilizing kind of this kind of pheromones that Midnight is able to produce to pass out Gigantomachia. And Izuku Midoriya engulfs him in so much earth and so much stone that the kind of pheromones get all stuck within there, and the pheromones themselves are all kind of within the like prison he creates for Gigantomachia, completely made out of stone. And eventually it seems as if it seems that Izuku is able to basically slow him down enough to where he passes out entirely, and they imprison him entirely as well. And luckily enough, this prison break was able to be slowed down, stopped, and put to a halt. And this would be the last time that these students would have to deal with such a kind of tragic event, at least to an extent, and for at least for a little bit. They're not going to have to worry about the League of Villains and these massive invasions anymore, and they're able to go on throughout the years of their own high school as regular kids trying to be some of the greatest heroes. And after the first, second, and third years of UA would go on past, Izuku would look forward to his heroic adventures, being able to channel his inner earthbender and channel his ability to utilize the stone beneath his feet, the metal that surrounds them, and even kind of the ground all around, from stone to ground to metal to sand itself. Izuku Midoriya's manipulation of it all, his ability to bend earth itself, allowed him to crack into the top 20 of the heroes just 2 years out of high school. And not only that, he would be a very big component of helping so many people, so many all around, not just helping them and saving them from hardships and other things like that, like, saving them from, typical villain activity, but also being able to create as well, utilizing earthbending to create housing and places and homes for the least fortunate. And Izuku Midoriya would do it all as a hero, and he may never touch the role of the number one, but it doesn't change the fact that he's one of the greatest and will be one of the greatest heroes alive. But with that said, that is the end of this story. And if you guys enjoyed, show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, and leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, show some love, like I said, to the video. And yeah, that's all I gotta say. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.